Hey everyone, it's Dr. Stephanie Wigner with the Wealthy Practitioner Podcast, and I am so excited that you guys decided to join me today. I am so incredibly excited for this project, my podcast that I've been working on. I'm so excited to get to share it with you guys. I honestly have had a dream for at least 2 years of starting my own podcast, and it's finally came to fruition, and I am just super pumped for everything that I have in store for you guys. So when I was thinking about what it is that I wanted to start my podcast with, typically people would do an intro, right? And I'm like, that's cool, but I don't really want to get on here and share all the cool things that I've accomplished with you guys or give you my credentials or focus on that kind of thing. I actually wanted to get on here and share with you guys about a lot of my failures and a lot of the mistakes that I've made on my journey of entrepreneurship and to building this epic empire that I have. And so when I was thinking back, I was like, there are a handful of mistakes that I've made and that I continue to make. And I want to just shed some light on those for you so that you can learn from them, because I think it's super powerful to learn from others in what they've done, not only in achieving things, but also in the mistakes that they've made. And I've made a lot of them. And so I'm going to pull back the curtain on some of that today and just show you like, hey, even though I've done some really cool stuff, I've also made some mistakes that I've learned from, and hopefully you can learn from them too. Eventually, we'll get into all the inner workings of building 4 clinics, diving into real estate, becoming an angel investor, how to build a super amazing team that can help carry your vision out. But today we're just starting with a few ways that I have sucked. So the number one thing is be prepared for the worst, right? So when I was first opening my chiropractic clinic, straight out of school, I was an associate to begin with. And so I was a Midwest girl moving to New Jersey, and I had what most would deem a really great associateship, right? Most people would say, hey, that was a great opportunity for you. And I would agree until I got into it. Like most things, it was pretty on the outside and not so pretty on the inside. And so when I first started working at this clinic, it was in North Jersey. And for those of you not familiar, New Jersey as a whole has like so many different sections to it that you really can't group Jersey into one category. And North Jersey is just a little bit more hustle and bustle. It's close to New York City. People are a little bit more short-tempered. It was very different than what I had become accustomed to in the Midwest. And so when we moved out here, essentially, it was a great position, but I was working a lot. I was seeing a lot of people, and I didn't have a great compensation structure. And I remember both of the clinic owners leaving on vacation, and I was the sole doctor, and I had saw 361 patients that week. And when they returned from vacation, I didn't get a bonus. And I was like, okay, this doesn't feel super great for me. I feel like I worked my tail off. I feel like I should be compensated for that. And the truth is that was just the icing on the cake for the burnout that I was feeling. And probably like you guys, I had went to school for 8 years, and I was like, this is not how I envisioned my life to go. This is not what I wanted when I went to chiropractic school. And so I started exploring other options. My boyfriend at the time, now husband, was working in a position where they really valued him. They paid him what he was worth. And I knew, hey, he can have the stability that we need. I'm going to go out and look at opening my own practice. It's something that I had wanted in school, but I was a little nervous to do it right out the gate. And so I was like, you know what? I have a year of experience now. Let me just see what happens. And I started looking in the area that we wanted to be. So we were in North Jersey. I started looking closer to the beach, and I was like, I love it here. It's a slower pace. It's super family oriented. The people seem a little bit friendlier. And so I was like, cool, this is where I want to open up. It just so happened there was a chiropractor retiring in the town that I wanted to be in. And so I had found him on I think our state website, and he was selling his practice. It was super affordable. And so I started exploring what that would look like. Once I dived into the practice, I realized that there was things that just didn't make sense. And we will definitely dive into that in another website. We will definitely dive into that in another episode about things you have to consider if purchasing a practice. But let's just say there was things on there that I didn't feel comfortable paying for. And so I negotiated only to get the lease and buy the equipment. And so when we were doing these negotiations, we came to an agreement and I was like, okay, I'm going to go back and tell my associateship, like I'm going to give them 90 days. In my contract, it only asked for 60 days, but I really wanted to do the right thing. And so I'm like, I'm going to give them 90 days. That'll give them time to find somebody else and just make the arrangements that they needed to make. And 2 days after giving my 90-day notice, I was let go. And at the time I was devastated. Like I didn't get to say goodbye to my patients. I didn't get to say really goodbye to the staff. And I was super hurt, right? Because I had felt like I did a great job for them and I was being more than fair in my notice. And turns out it was the best thing ever that happened to me because that allowed me to just focus on growing my business and getting it up off the ground. And looking back, it's great. You guys actually did me a solid, but at the time it felt super traumatic, right? I think that now that I have a little bit more experience, I know that this is a common thing that a lot of business owners do. When the associate gives their notice, they let them go immediately just because they want to protect their business. So I definitely understood where they were coming from once I had time to think about it. But lo and behold, 3 weeks later, I got my little clinic up and going, small space, less than 600 square feet. And I get a cease and desist in the mail. And I was like, what? Of course I'm panicking. Like I'm a new doctor. I'm like, what is this about? And it's because we had taken photos while I worked at the clinic and I used one of the headshots of myself out in outside out in the wilderness. And I had used that on my business cards in my practice that I had just started. I took a picture of the office and you could see my business card on there with my headshot. And the cease and desist was for using their property, even though it was a picture of myself. And I was like, okay, clearly that's a bit dramatic, but I realized, wow, now that I'm on my own and now that I'm a business owner, I really have to be prepared for the worst. Like literally anything can happen and I have to be on the defense. Essentially, I have to be able to handle it. Right. And I stopped using that picture. I had a new headshot I had a new photo shoot lined up for the following week anyways. And so I was like, great, I don't need to use this picture. This is old Stephanie anyways. I'm channeling that new Stephanie, that bad bitch energy, right? And that was my first lesson in entrepreneurship. Be prepared for the worst and know that it can happen at any time. And so my next lesson for you is you need a good business coach, but even a bad one can teach you valuable lessons. So being the achiever that I am, I've always had a coach, and I knew that if I was going to open my own practice, I wanted a coach to help guide me. And so I was like, okay, I had reached out to a girlfriend. One of her practice owners was using a coach. So I hired this woman and it ended up not being a great fit, but we worked together for a few months. And one of the things that she advised me to do was make these door hangers with my face, the office info, and just like contact information on them and go around. She had me make 100 door hangers and go around to all the local neighborhoods in my community and put them on people's doors. And when I tell you guys the amount of anxiety this gave me, I can't even put it into words. I ordered the door hangers. I was ready to put them up, and time came. It was like a Saturday afternoon, and my fiance at the time, he was like, okay, we're going to go. We're going to do this, babe. And I was like, great. And we hopped in the car and we pulled up to the first house, and I literally I was paralyzed. I couldn't get out of the car. I was like, I can't do it. Turn around. Who cares? I'll throw them in the garbage. And he was like, absolutely not. We don't have money to just purchase for these door hangers and then to throw them out and not use them. And I was like, Kyle, I don't care. I can't do it. And he was like, fine, I'll do it for you. And so he went up to the first door and he knocked and he was like, hey, my fiance just opened up a practice next door. If you're ever in need of a chiropractor, here's her contact information. The person was super nice, of course. And I just remember being like, okay, I don't care if they were nice. Like, I still don't want to do it. This doesn't feel good to me. And so Kyle gets back in the car and I'm like, awesome. Cool. Let's turn around. He was like, absolutely not, Steph. We only did one. And so I get up and I get the courage and I go up to this house, and it's actually a woman that has children. So my typical ideal client. And I say, hi, I'm Dr. Stephanie Wigner. I just opened up down the road. If you're ever in need of a chiropractor, I specialize in pediatrics, blah, 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 blah. She just looked at me like I had three heads. Who in the world is this woman knocking on my door, telling me to bring my children into her? And why are you here? It's Saturday afternoon, leave. And so I got back in the car and I was like, Kyle, I don't care. I'm done. I'm not going to do this. This isn't the type of energy that I want to put out there when I'm building my business. And this isn't who I am. It's not what I want to be doing. And so he was like, okay, that's fine. Like, I could tell you're uncomfortable. We don't have to do it. But I remember joking with him that day and saying, I can't wait to tell our children that the only reason that mommy's successful is because daddy got out of the car and went and handed out door hangers for her new business. And so the lesson here is that you absolutely have to be forced outside of your comfort zone, but it has to be incongruent with the type of business that you're trying to build. It has to be congruent with who it is you're trying to attract. And also, this business coach, while we weren't a good fit, she is somebody who I had worked with when I was first purchasing the practice, and she helped me realize why buying that clinic wasn't a great fit for the price that he was selling it for. So I'm eternally grateful for her. She definitely saved me some money in the startup costs. So I'm eternally grateful for her. She definitely saved me money where that was concerned. And the lesson here is too, that you just have to take what you can from those that you're learning from and implement what works for you, not what worked for other people. What's going to work for you is way different than what worked for others. Lesson number 3 is your first hire is likely not your best hire. So little old me, I'm probably 5 or 6 months into practice at this point. And I'm like, okay, I'm ready to make my first hire. I want to make sure that I don't have to be the one answering the phone and scheduling all the appointments. And I just basically I was starting to get burnout. And I did a group interview like I was advised to do, which for the first time hiring, I wouldn't suggest. Maybe others would suggest that. But I definitely don't, because it's all new territory. It's awkward. You're asking questions. You don't really get a feel for the person individually. But I was doing what I was told by my business coach, and I did a group interview, and nobody really stood out to me during the interview, but I was getting desperate, and I was like, okay, I have to hire somebody. And so I took the best fit then at the time that I thought was the best fit. And I hired her, and she was a wonderful person. She is so sweet. We're still friends on Facebook today. She has a beautiful family. But she was by no means the right fit for a front desk. She wasn't super bubbly. She was shy. She was timid. She didn't have a lot of that oomph. So she was shy. She was timid. She wasn't super talkative like you would really want from a front desk staff. And she just wasn't the best fit. And I remember one of my friends who I respect dearly, she has her own practice. She was a patient of mine as well. And she said, Steph, what are you doing? And I was like, what do you mean? What am I doing? She was like, that is not who you need at your front desk. And I was like, I know, but she's so sweet. And I just hired her like 40 days ago, and I don't know what I'm going to do. And she was like, you have to let her go. If you want to build the practice that you truly want and serve the patients that you want, you have to let her go, because she is not a good reflection of your brand. And I, being the badass that I am, agreed. And then, being the badass I am, decided that I was going to let her go. But essentially, I wasn't going to fire her. And so what I did was I said, hey, look, I know you're super busy. She had another part-time job because, again, she was only working part-time for me at the time. And I was like, listen, I know you're super busy. It's getting ready to be your busy season. I'm just going to have you work on some projects from home for me. You are going to be able to make your own schedule. You could do some Canva things, some social media, some graphics. And I think that's what's going to work best. So you don't have to come to work next week. And she was like, okay. And I was like, yeah, I'll just send you an email over this weekend and tell you everything that you can work on. And she was like, okay. And that is how I fired my first employee. I never sent her anything to work on at home. I never followed up. That's a lie. I actually think I followed up and was like, hey, I'm so sorry. I don't really have much for you to work on, but next week I'll reach out. And I think that was the last time that I heard from her. And I know she doesn't have hard feelings. I think she knows that I did not have any clue what I was doing, right? I had no idea. I was just hiring because I didn't want to be the one answering the phone anymore. Looking back, I probably should have properly prepared for onboarding a first employee. I should have had a list of things for her to work on, a list of things that I wanted her to take off my plate, but I didn't know what I was doing. And I think she knew that too. And that's why I think she probably still is okay with the way that things went down. But the lesson here is it's okay if you don't know what you're doing when you're hiring. 25 plus employees later, I still make mistakes. I am not perfect, but I've learned a lot since that first hire. And so if you're considering making your first hire, just get it out of the way. You're going to learn a lot. They're probably not going to be with you forever. And it's going to be a huge learning lesson for you. And that's okay. And it's something that you should just get done and over with and get that first one under your belt and keep it moving. And that's the thing. So I hope you guys got a kick out of hearing these few stories. I hope you guys got a kick out of listening to 3 of my biggest failures when opening my first clinic. There is going to be so many more lessons that I'm going to share with you guys over the coming months about things that I've tried, things that have worked really well, things that haven't worked well. And so that's that. That's how my first hire went. And so in addition to making these mistakes that I've shared with you guys, I've also had some huge successes, right? Or I wouldn't be here. And one of those things that I wanted to share with you is always betting on myself. And so often today, I think it's easy to have imposter syndrome. I think it's easy to compare yourself to others. I think that it's easy to think that you're not doing enough, even though you feel like you're doing a lot. It still doesn't feel like enough compared to others. And I think that as long as you trust your intuition and you bet on yourself and you really focus on what it is that you're good at and what it is your innate abilities are, what it is your intuition is telling you that you should pursue and follow, then you're going to end up exactly where you're meant to be and exactly where you want to be. There are so many times when I was opening my practice that people were like, oh, you shouldn't cater to prenatal pediatrics. Like people only think about chiropractic in the sense of back pain or neck pain or headaches. And I didn't listen to any of that. I was like, that's not who I want to work with. I want to work with prenatal and pediatrics. So I am going to specialize right away. And I'm glad that I did. I bet on myself, right? I knew that I had the capabilities of spreading the message about how impactful that was so that I would have a booming prenatal pediatric practice. And then there are other times when I've bet on myself, just like leaving the associateship. I was like, I could stay here and continue to be unhappy or continue not to feel valued or be paid what I'm worth, or I could bet on myself. I could give it a go. What's the worst that could happen? I think anytime that you bet on yourself, you're saying I'm worth it. Anytime you bet on yourself, you're saying everything that I've done leading up to this moment is going to pay off. I've prepared for this. I am ready for this moment and it is my time to shine. And when you listen to that, the universe conspires on your behalf. The universe gives you opportunities when you're saying, hey, I'm worth it and I'm going to show the hell up, and things start to shift for you. The other thing that I've done The other great thing that I've done in business is paying attention to my numbers, right? I think that's one thing when I've worked with other doctors in the past, we can get on a coaching call and I realize that none of them know. We can get on a coaching call and I realize that a lot of them don't even know what their profit margins are. They don't know how much it costs them to see a patient. They don't know what their return on is. They don't know what their return on the investment is when they're doing different marketing ads. And so the best thing that I've done in opening several different businesses, which by the way, I didn't mention earlier, but my husband and I have 7 businesses and counting. We love opening new businesses. We love the thrill of trying something new and sometimes failing and sometimes succeeding. We love pushing ourselves. And so there's been a lot of lessons that I've learned in opening those 7 businesses. But one of the things is knowing your numbers and knowing what your budget is, knowing what your profit margin is. I keep track of all of that data in different spreadsheets so that I can come back and be able to analyze what worked really well for us and what didn't. And I do that based on what the numbers are telling me, not emotionally how I feel like, not emotionally how I feel like, last month wasn't a good one. No, I'm looking at the numbers. Like last month's profit was down 5%. How come? Our ad spend was up. Okay. Our marketing expenses were up. Our rent increased by 3%. I look at the numbers for everything. And so if there's one little piece of advice I can tell you is to start diving into your numbers now. The sooner you know them, the better. And it's going to prevent more mistakes from happening in the future when you're able to truly analyze the numbers and know what you need to do moving forward. I hope you guys got a kick out of this and learned about some of my failures, learned where I've succeeded. And clearly the message here is that growth isn't always pretty, right? There's a lot of mess that happens. It's not pretty when you're growing and you're pushing yourself and you're trying new things, but there's a lot to be learned from all of the mistakes. But there's a lot to be learned from the mistakes that you make so that you can make better choices in the future. Tune in to my next episode where I walk you through how I went from opening my first clinic to opening my satellite clinic in less than 15 months later. I hope you guys got a kick out of this. I hope you're able to laugh at the idea of me sitting in my car and being too scared to get out and go put up door hangers on a stranger's door. I hope you are able to learn from my failures. 2055. I hope you guys got a kick out of this. I hope you're able to learn from some of my failures. Clearly, the message here is that growth is messy. It is not always pretty. There's a lot to be learned in those moments of failure or when we feel like we're failing. There's a lot to be learned, and there's a lot. I hope you guys got a kick out of this and learned from some of my failures. Clearly, I think the message here is that growth isn't always pretty. There's a lot to be learned during those times. There's a lot that you can take from that and use to your advantage moving forward. We haven't even dove into all the investment mistakes that we have made along the way. So I will definitely be sharing that with you guys as future episodes unfold. And tune into my next episode where I'm going to walk you through how I opened my very first clinic and how I opened a satellite clinic less than 15 months later. See you next time.